Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as cEDH. I'm one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Matt, aka Null.
Yo.
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
How you doing?
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
What's up, everyone?
And in this episode, we will be covering combat in cEDH. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode? And I want to kick things off by throwing the floor to Matt, because he has finished Severance, which I've been.
I did my mandatory homework.
Yeah.
Nice.
Matt, if you could say some words about Severance that will hopefully fucking get Morgan and Reed to watch it as
Lyndon,
well.
I hope you fully understand that framing this as homework to a podcast full of people with ADHD is not the approach.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the best thing to have playing while you're also doing two other things. It's the best.
Dude, Matt.
It's great.
For our
Yeah,
listeners,
awesome.
also, how good is that show, man? It's so good.
It's a 9 out of 10, I think.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I'm not playing it up. It's really good, and I'm on the edge of a cliff.
Morgan, they're actually
for
just
next
conning
season.
us, and it's like the worst thing ever, but they want everybody else to watch it so we're all on the same level.
I want all my friends to have watched it so that I can make like references to it. I want to talk about innies and outies in turn from Severance. Yeah. There's so much good reference material in that. But yeah, watch the show. That's my pitch for the week.
But you all know you have that Apple TV Plus trial waiting to crack it open.
For reals, Matt, Morgan, Reed, anything for you guys?
Been playing a lot of Vampire Survivors again.
It's
after
brain
Zach
disease that has
remembered.
taken over our play group. Yeah.
Zach started playing again, and he's been streaming it a bit on the server, and I'm just like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I'll keep playing some more of that.
Dude, we'll literally have like Vintage Cube, one person streaming Vintage Cube, and then two other people streaming Vampire Survivor.
It's so good.
Yeah. I was surprised when someone explained that all you control is the movement, everything else is auto attacking.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? Wow. Okay.
So like, is getting in a voice chat and everyone's streaming random games just the 2020s LAN party?
Yeah. Dude, it's a great way to get scratch that social itch without ever having to leave your house and touch grass outside.
Or be social.
Yeah,
because you're
yeah,
all
yeah.
playing your own games. It's more of a LAN.
Anyone want to
gathering.
play some like Among Us? No, absolutely not. Single player games only. Don't even mute, please. Actually.
Let's be real though. The way we play Vintage Cube, it's a multiplayer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, I guess.
Oh
Vintage
no!
Cube is
Okay,
back.
no. Morgan's gonna tell the story actually, because it's like the greatest thing ever.
Oh yeah. I got to just ruin some poor unsuspecting strangers.
Well, you
dreams
did it to two
in a
different
Vintage
people
Cube
back to
game.
back with the same card.
Turns out Hymn to Turak is a good card. I cast a Hymn to Turak, and my opponent discarded Black Lotus and Time Walk. And
On turn 2.
Nice power,
Turn two.
idiot.
Take that.
So that was pretty good, and then the next game I Hymn to Turak someone, and they discarded Mere Battle Sphere that I was able to immediately reanimate from their bin.
Absolutely disgusting.
That's
Both of those plays netting
Disgusting.
immediate concessions for the record.
2 mana win the game.
the
Crazy.
psychological win.
Dude, remember when Vintage Cube used to be the holiday cube because they ran it only during the holidays or whatever? Yeah.
And then they were like, "Wait a minute, people like
this.
and-
People are
and
logging
they
into
pay us
Moto and
money
making
to-
accounts just for this. Yeah.
They pay us money to enter these drafts. Let's do this more."
Like how many people, like, Morgan, do you use Moto outside of Vintage Cube?
I haven't recently, but like I have definitely played other formats on Moto a decent amount.
Like I've not a decent amount for myself. I've like touched them, but definitely I could imagine that there's quite a few people like who play exclusively for Vintage Cube, so Watsy sees these numbers just like, oh, Vintage Cube is back online. Oh, all these like previously inactive accounts are coming back. You know.
Well, I mean,
20,
yeah, like
20,000%.
I played Moto enough that when my account was compromised and they sold all my cards, then tried to sell the tickets, it was 800 tickets. So it's a pretty
it's a lot of scrubbing out,
rip.
dude. That's a lot of times you don't have to draft mono white or mono red.
It sure is.
Cool. So without further ado, let's jump into housekeeping. And as always in housekeeping, we like to give a shout out to our new patrons. This week, we'd like to give a big shout out to Sam S. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Sam.
You rock.
Oh, we're back. Oh, we're back, baby.
I think we were back last episode, right?
Yeah.
I think we were back reluctantly back at the last episode. This episode we're back in the full swing of things.
I was ready to not say it, but now that it started again, the next 60 episodes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's housekeeping, and then we've got new developments. There's a couple of tournaments. Let's say upcoming. I mean, they are upcoming, but
Yeah,
they're not like
they are.
immediate. So I'll throw the floor to Morgan Reed. You guys can.
Oh, well, we deleted
with
one
these.
here, but as of the time of us recording this, it is going to be Baldur's Street Brawl, which hasn't happened yet, but will happen by the time that we release this episode. So once that's happened, go check it out. It's a tournament being run by the r/cEDH Discord, and they're running it using only it's a cEDH tournament with only commanders from New Capenna and from Commander Legends 2, which is also known as D&D Baldur's Gate, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So
Commander Legends Forgotten Realms Dungeons and Dragons Baldur's Gate or something. I think it's like the
God. Anyway,
the full title.
yeah, I think it's gonna be cool. So go check that out. I'm sure they'll post a tournament recap on Reddit or something, and there'll probably be recordings of the finals pod and stuff. So that'll be neat. Actually, speaking of which, quick gut check on those. What do you guys think is the best position going into it? Because this is gonna be great contrast with hindsight after we release this.
The best what?
Best position deck with a commander from New Capenna and Baldur's Gate 2, or sorry, Baldur's Gate.
Maybe Rafine. Rafine's really good.
I-
man.
I don't.
Rafine's solid.
I can't think of anything that's like. I think, like, it's Rafine, then Rocco, and I think Rafine just has like so much more flexibility.
I think unfortunately Rafine also. I think
Yeah.
Rafine's just got a good matchup versus Rocco too.
Well, I think also there's something of an unfortunate
Mhm.
truth that when everyone's trying to do their like clever commander-centric whatever strategies, that just kind of randomly consulting on people is it's gonna be good.
I mean, I guess aside from that, then it would probably be a Gale Waterdeep Prodigy plus a thing, right? Sign of Halister.
I don't know. Evelyn is still just like Grixis plus World Gorger.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, never mind. There's some pretty good options, I think. I think maybe Evelyn. I think Evelyn's probably good if you think people are going to be playing a lot of Rocco, because that deck is not good at developing stuff early if it wants to actually do its game plan in terms of like developing stacks. So I think if you think it's going to be Rocco heavy, then Evelyn's probably the pick, right? Try to work with people.
I think the fear with Evelyn is that if the meta is slow, and it seems like it's likely to be slow because, like, just generally commander-centric strategies are like gonna be on the slower side, and this format definitely encourages that. Then like you're just gonna be trying to turbo into people being ready for that, and there won't be that like, oh, somebody else tried to turbo win and I got to take advantage thing because like nobody else in the pod is playing turbo.
Right.
Is a risk that I foresee potentially making it really difficult to play something like Turbo Evelyn.
Dude, the name Baldur's Street Brawl, or that's what it, Baldur's Street Brawl, that's it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great name for combining the two sets, but it sounds like a Hearthstone set. What was the name of that? Morgan, do you know what I'm talking about? I can't remember.
Mean Streets of Gadgetzan.
Yeah. That's exactly what it makes you think of, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're not entirely off base there.
So besides that, we've got some other tournaments here as well.
We do. We have some upcoming
Reed.
ones. Go for it, Morgan. First one, I guess.
Sure. The first one is Tier 1 Con, which will be taking place in Copenhagen on the weekend of October, whatever it is. It's
August.
Like 5th, or sorry,
Yeah.
August. August, like 5th-ish.
6th, 7th, I think, of August.
Oh, okay, sure. Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
We got there.
Look,
August
we're
5th through
There
7th.
you go.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is.
So that should be pretty cool. Obviously, we went last year, and it was a ton of fun. They definitely put on a great event, and I think they're gearing up for round next verse same as the first, so it should be lots of fun. And I know Reed and I are more or less locked in for going.
Definitely gotta
obviously
go
barring,
defend my crown.
Yeah. I
Obviously,
unfortunately
barring
cannot make
some.
it, but it is 100% an awesome time and would recommend if you can make it.
Also, I believe they said they are, in fact, the prizes. The winner gets a time twister.
It is a time twister this time around.
That's locked in.
Holy
Yeah.
moly.
Even crazier.
Last
year.
time it was if they got 200 entrants, the winner got a time twister. This time it's the winner gets a time twister. So that's pretty hype.
They ran out of tools last
I mean,
time.
the goal at this point is just to keep winning Tier 1 Con and just build my RL collection entirely out of tournament winnings, right?
yeah.
That is definitely the dream.
I love how Reed said he didn't say the dream, he said the plan.
No, 100% the plan.
Yeah, I think I could just win it
you just,
again. That's
a couple of years.
Yeah,
Time
guys,
twister
Cody's
on the
bad.
line.
Don't bring
and,
Cody. Don't prepare for
next
Cody.
time I'll
Remember
pick
how
up
Cody's
like
bad?
a survival and a bazaar and something like that. And then eventually they'll have like a workshop on the line, and then I can pick up a workshop.
What do you need a workshop for?
Yeah, just to have it.
The collection, the plan.
Yeah. We also have Oktoberfest listed here under upcoming tournaments.
Also being organized by Monarch. So Tier 1 Con, obviously being organized by Tier 1 MTG and paired with Monarch. Oktoberfest being run entirely by Monarch. But it's going to be a good one. This is one of the... I think Monarch is sort of settling into doing 2 major events every year. So Monarch year and Oktoberfest year. So Oktoberfest will be the second large Monarch tournament of the year if we don't count Tier 1 Con. And that one's going to be held in... I think it's... that's right.
It's Philadelphia.
Yeah. So it's the hotel downtown Philadelphia. And it's going to be the 28th of October to the 30th of October. It's actually going to be pretty big. They have a capacity, they say, of over 250. So that's going to be pretty hot.
Wow.
Yeah. We don't have a whole lot of other stuff about it right now. Not a whole lot of details, but we know that it's happening. So have it on your radar.
Yeah, and we've got time.
Oh yeah.
We will update you more as the event approaches.
Yeah. I'm sure at least some of us are gonna try to make the attempt to get out there because it's relatively close. It's a short hop of a flight away or like a day's worth of driving. So I think we'll definitely try to get down there.
I've got a flight
more
voucher I
convenient
need
than
to use.
Copenhagen.
Yep.
Sorry, Morgan, say that again?
I said it's a lot more convenient than Copenhagen.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So if you're on
I've got the flight voucher from the last one in Seattle, so I need to go somewhere.
Get out
within a year. So.
Oh, true.
Yeah,
Nice.
We'll
definitely make that one happen. So yeah, I mean, if you're on the east coast of the U.S. or sort of eastern Canada, even Midwest, honestly, of the U.S., should see if you can make plans, see if you can come out, because I think it's gonna be a good time.
Awesome. Well, that can wrap up new developments for us and move us into the main topic which again is combat in cEDH. But guys, everyone knows combat doesn't matter in cEDH, right? Come on.
Just like politics.
It's a
yeah.
meme. It's a myth.
Yeah, it's maybe it was less of a myth at one point, but it's too long for that myth to still be perpetuating. I mean, I think it's perpetuating a lot less these days, but you still hear it every now and then. Normally from casual players, usually, but yeah. There is one thing that is that is sometimes a bit true, which is that cEDH players don't know how combat works.
For the record, this is absolutely true. I put it in here as like sort of a meme, but it is like 100% true.
Sad.
I've seen people forget how double strike works. I've seen people forget how trample works in combat. I've seen people just not at all know this.
What fool would forget how trample works?
Who really knows how trample works? Really?
People forget that vigilance exists all the time on creatures, like all the time.
Vigilance is fantastic in this format.
People don't even know how banding works. SMH.
Even the steps.
I think the big thing is that you can get away with not really knowing how combat works or like being super invested in combat in cEDH, but you're definitely hampering your overall win rate, right? Like,
yeah, it's not a death sentence to not know how combat works in cEDH, like it is in like every other
like even
Magic
if you just
format,
completely ignored, if you
yeah.
just completely ignored combat, you're still gonna get wins in cEDH. You're just gonna get less wins, because there are I guess it is just like politics, right? Like, if everyone is just dead there, like dead quiet, just in the pod, playing their games, I mean, you're still gonna win some, right? But you're probably not going to win as much as if you're actively participating, trying to make deals and convince people of things. So, yeah, it's definitely an asset to invest some time into really studying the art of combat in cEDH.
Oh god!
Hopefully, this episode
wording.
can serve as a tool to help you out.
The art of war.
Yes, you got to start by reading Sun Tzu. That's it's required reading. Okay, so what are some uses for combat in cEDH? Because I mean, there's quite a few, but there's more than just attacking my opponent so that he's dead. In fact, that's most often that's like one of the least frequent uses for combat.
Well, so I mean, there's the immediate level one that every cEDH player's first introduction to combat. Like
baby's
first combat.
Baby's first words. Yeah.
in cEDH, which is hit the Nas player.
Yeah.
Which is that it's a great thing. It's a great phrase to remember. But realistically, the actual answer here is that a lot of people we start with very high life totals in this format. It tends to be very difficult to actually kill people with a single creature or just playing some random dudes out. So people tend to feel like they have a lot of life to work with and a lot of life to spare. So what does that turn into naturally? Well, people tend to use life as a resource a lot in this format. Sylvan libraries, ad nauseums, necropotences. There's just
tarnished citadels,
tons of just painful mana bases. There's a ton of stuff that in this format that just people want to convert their life into additional resources in other forms. So attacking them to reduce their use of those additional resources tends to be a pretty good idea. Who'd have guessed?
We also have here Tymna, which is where I think really revolutionized combat in cEDH, or made people pay a lot closer attention to it.
But it's also Tymna here is sort of representative of a larger class of effects and sort of
but
outcomes,
I mean,
right?
those classes of effects existed, or some of them existed.
Sure,
Tymna.
just in terms of just the uses for combat straight up, Tymna isn't the only thing in this class. I would say Tymna is probably the best thing in this class by a country mile because it's in the command zone.
Well, Tymna isn't just the best thing in the class, but it also is the one that had the most impact and changed the way that people consider. People aren't talking about Edric blockers. They're talking about Tymna blockers. because of just the ubiquitousness of
well, the asymmetry to
Tymna decks,
ease of like getting them in. Yeah.
Well, I think also the difference is that Tymna is like, it's much less of a build around than Edric. Like Edric is looking to just play evasive creatures, right? Which then like makes having blockers.
And people are also like
yeah,
less likely to let an Edric sit and play than a Tymna sit and play, right?
Yeah, like I mean, I guess trying to devote you have to devote slots to have Edric blockers or whatever. But for something like Tymna, I mean, the Tymna decks are trying to get Tymna attackers more or less incidentally, unless they're playing something like a Loyal Apprentice. But because they're trying to get these incidentally, often, you know, people are looking to defend against this also incidentally. Like, hey, this card is pretty good, but it's also a great Tymna blocker. You know, like that's something to consider. Just a bit easier to do and accomplish. What other uses do we have for combat in cEDH?
No,
well, one
that's
fantastic
right?
scenario that I find myself in is in grindy games, combat suddenly becomes everyone's alternate win condition, and in that regard, it starts becoming political. So, especially if you have Kenrith in your command zone, or, I mean, maybe to a lesser extent, Gitrog, but anything that just randomly has high power starts becoming your win condition.
Yeah, I'd say like even a more generalized version of that is like just like more like when people have run out of other things to do or have run out of other things that they're willing to do, then like combat's sort of like the fallback, like everybody participates in this type of thing where it's like, okay, well, like nobody's willing to do anything or nobody has anything to do, so what do we do now? Well, let's turn our creatures sideways at people to try to get them dead, or like at least like try to force them to do something even.
You're at a disadvantage. It would be at a disadvantage to take any like proactive action or like any very serious proactive action, like going for a win attempt or trying to develop something like, you know, extremely potent.
Say because people have obvious interaction, or there's like there's like mass removal ready to go, and you can't really afford like the 1v1 analogy of this is like, well, I can't commit any more creatures to this board because I know that they have a Wrath of God, or they're very likely to have a Wrath of God. So like same sort of situation, just in more abstract, in cEDH. Where it's like, well, I don't really want to take any more game actions that involve committing things to the board or like committing spells to the stack, so let's do this instead.
Which, and you know, it's a very potent tool because, you know, there's kind of the old cEDH adage, which isn't like completely true, but it has, you know, definitely some truth and kind of useful lessons out of it, which is that the first player to combo loses, which is, you know, obviously not universally true, but forcing someone to combo when they're not ready and have the adequate resources to defend their win, and to kind of like bait interaction out from everyone else is extremely beneficial. So if you're able to kind of just incidentally pressure someone else to go for it, you know, then potentially draining interaction from the pod and then setting yourself up to go for a win, that's like huge. And you know, in our meta, certainly we see this quite a bit because we have an Urza player, and turns out constructs are terrifying. it's I think one of the things with the constructs too is like they're very terrifying because Urza is also like a good blocker against like chip damage. So like you can basically feel completely confident turning sideways without your life total being pressured.
The fact that he's a 1/4 and comes with an XX is just like
it's so disgusting.
But like this sort of stuff as well. Like I don't want to stick on this for too much because we still have other uses for combat that we need to get through here a bit. But this was, as an example, like this kind of stuff that we're talking about right now was actually like a huge thing during the Flash meta specifically. And I mean, it's sort of less of a thing now, but it's still certainly relevant. Where as soon as people like no longer want to like play out their combos, because they think they can find a better time for it, or especially if people at the table happen to have like instant speed options to do stuff, a lot of people will tend to just choose to not take those actions if they have other alternatives, like activating Thrasios or whatever, until they absolutely need to. So yeah, it's just, like combat's just a super great way, or like it becomes a very crucial way of interacting with them.
Which we definitely saw with like particularly when, you know, right towards the end of Flash days when Kenrith came out, and it was like, oh, this is actually like, if we get into like a sandbag off, like Kenrith was absolutely the Flash Hulk mirror breaker.
Yeah,
because it's like, all right, well, we're all sitting here, Flash in hand.
You're generating cars for 4 mana. I'm generating beats for 2 mana.
Yeah, like I'll just be hitting you with. I'll put a couple. You know, instead of activating a Thrasios, I'll activate Kenrith twice. He's now a 7/7. You have 3 turns. Enjoy.
Yeah. So we also have here, you know, as we were saying, moving on, we've got some grindy politics, which I guess kind of falls in with pressure.
Well, yeah, I think that's sort of what Matt was talking about earlier. If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think we've probably covered that.
Well, I think there's also like there's pressuring people into action, but also sometimes there is just like killing people before they can actually win, right? Like particularly with slower decks with a lot of value, if you can actually, like, particularly with a couple people working in concert, just put a bunch of damage on them, and then, you know, they develop their, like, you know, to take everyone's favorite example, Thrasios Seedborn Muse engine, and then, like, they're dead, they don't have time to take advantage of it. You know, that can, like, be a really powerful tool to modify. Essentially, you look at which decks are advantaged in, you know, a later game, in, you know, when you think the game is heading in that direction, and then go, okay, well, let's, given that they have an advantage if the game goes in this direction, let's try and give them a disadvantage to you know, balance that out a little bit.
Yeah, and this
put him within just a safe distance of, like, I could kill them in a couple turns.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it doesn't even have to be killing them. It's just getting them to a point where you can, like, comfortably just snuff out the flame on command, basically. Just be like,
you want to keep the control player in for their counter spells,
their interaction
until they're no longer useful to you, and then you kill them. Yeah,
your services are no longer required.
You know what, Lyndon? I'm glad you said it as the Brawl player. We didn't have to.
Dude, Brawl is a 1/3. You're like, oh, you know, this is a decent blocker until, like, Morgan pulls out Calamax.
Or Urian, or Urza, or...
I can't. He's so tiny. He's a tiny man. But yeah, we also have under uses for combat that we didn't list here is just actually winning the game. There is some decks in cEDH whose primary game plan is to use combat steps to close out the game, and this isn't just you know, I mean, there's obviously some combat-based combos. There's Nagila, there's Kiki combos, Godo, etc. But some decks are playing things, I guess, I mean, there's one deck that's playing, like, you know, Kamal, and that's like Timna Kamal.
Well, I mean, there's also like
their win con list, right? They don't have a dedicated combo. Their win is going to be beating you to death after the game has been stacked out using Kamal. And there's you know, commanders that can do that, like Winota, who are trying to beat you to death with stacks. But then there's also decks that are just incidentally running cards that can achieve this, like Tendershoot Dryad, and I guess Elish Norn to some extent is like doubling as a stacks effect, and then also kind of a way to push for game.
I mean, there's a reason why Elish Norn has just been, like, omnipresent in cEDH for so long. Like, I don't think, like, it's rare that the best deck in the format plays Elish Norn. I'm actually not sure the best deck in the format ever played Elish Norn. Maybe Cats at some point, but like, there's a reason why
Cats never really played Elish Norn.
There's a reason why Elish Norn has continued to just, like, persist in a lot of decks, right? And it's just because the effect is so powerful at both giving you a very, very real clock. I mean, double Anthem is super real, but also, like, staxing a lot of combos out of the game, because if your combo requires, like, having an X2 in play, then, like, it's just completely shut off. And also just like clearing blockers super easily and making the leftover blockers super small just like makes you win combat so hard.
Too bad it wasn't -3 because you can Gilded Drake it.
Can you actually imagine if Elshnorn was -3 just like not ever being
I feel like it
Drake
wouldn't make that
insane.
much of a difference.
Yeah.
It definitely
Other
would.
than
It definitely would.
yeah,
Like
Kills
self,
Drake
sorry,
would
it
make a
was
big difference.
I
self-protecting
would
against
actually
Gilded
run
Drake
it
is
if
huge.
it were -3.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. Like, apart from in specifically cEDH where Gilded Drake is a problem.
Oh,
like,
sure, yeah.
I don't really think that effect in like casual commander. I don't think that number particularly matters once it's past 2.
Yeah, it's just
Well,
Like the jump from 1
Yeah.
to 2 is big, but I don't think the jump from 2 to 3 is particularly big.
well,
other than-
what's the Elishnorn on that does -1, the white one?
Corvax? No.
I was thinking.
Yeah,
It's
Crovax?
Crovax.
Crovax.
Is
Yeah.
Corvax from Fractorio?
It's the-
It definitely is, right?
No. It's the black. There's a black one and then there's a white one.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah,
both
yeah.
the same
it's
CMC.
Crovax. It's I believe the black one is called Ascendant Evankar, and then Crovax Ascendant Hero is the white one.
Yeah, not too
Yeah.
many people playing
Yep.
that, which is
Yes.
a good.
Non-white.
I mean, they're
creatures.
also they're color coded, which does make them substantially
Yeah.
worse.
That is true.
Like as opposed to just being symmetrical.
non-green creatures get -1/-1. Imagine.
God, so toxic.
Oh wow. Yeah. So that covers kind of most of the generic uses for combat in cEDH. But if we want to kind of get into the nitty gritty in terms of like how to assess where to point your damage, and we can even discuss a bit factoring combat damage in like before the game. Looking at cards in your deck and kind of just thinking about your overall strategy and plan for combat damage ahead of time. So, where do you point your damage in a game? How do you assess that?
It's a great question. I think we actually probably have a couple of heuristics to go by here. I think this is Morgan's first, or is this Matt's first?
It's not mine, so
I'm assuming it's Morgan's.
Wait,
imagine that's Morgan's.
Whatever.
Sorry. Yeah.
When in doubt, attack the Adnaz player. Okay, next.
Yeah. So in the short term, definitely you want to be hitting people who are going to make like immediate and large use of their life total. So this is like obviously Adnaz is the poster child for this. I think
Dedicated
possibly
necro
even
decks.
more. Yeah, possibly even more extreme is like specifically Zur with like their primary plan just being tutor necropotents.
Oscar is probably doing the similar thing now as well with Necro.
Yeah. Any crick decks in the pod?
Yep.
Yeah, Crick. There's also hitting the Godo player down to
Exactly 38.
Or 39.
39?
It
should work
depends. It
just as
depends
well.
on how much.
Sure, but
The amount changes
But
depending on
the idea
the
is
mana they
the
have,
idea is
yeah.
you're hitting breakpoints on Treasonous Ogre specifically.
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
Just so they can't. They need
33
one
life,
extra mana
yeah, to
after their
do the entire
Treasonous Ogre to randomly dead you. Yeah, and just things like this is like that should be sort of the first thing you look at, and then as the game sort of progresses, you probably want to start like shifting your focus to like as we were saying earlier, like valuing putting pressure and valuing the people who are favored in the long game getting damage on them, as opposed to sort of the short immediate
And like
avert the crisis of getting
and
nosed.
it might not even be forcing them to like try to commit to a win con, but just forcing people to commit to courses of action based on the fact that you're putting damage on them is very powerful in a lot of these types of games. So like it's not even like you're attacking somebody, they have a win in hand, but they don't really want to go for it. But like maybe they have to tutor for a removal spell, or they need to like take a turn off to just like put a blocker in play to stop you attacking them. Just like using combat as sort of a way to mess with tempo and sort of to extract resources from your opponents. that don't even have to be like forcing them to attempt to win.
Absolutely. So
And
what
then,
are
well, sorry, I think Morgan has the
go
last
for it.
stage, right?
I mean, sure. I just sort of put these down. They're not necessarily things that I have like very specific ideas for, but yeah, in the long game, that's when you should probably start looking to be, killing people based on sort of how their role in the game interacts with your game plan. So, oftentimes that will mean, you want to kill the person who can outgrind you. And if you're not in a position to win, you want to kill the people who are going to be like the people who might be able to win. If you are in a position to win, then you probably want to focus on the people who can stop you.
Yeah.
Or
in
if
every pod,
say if you're in a position to win, but you don't have like backup, maybe you want to attack the other fast deck at the table to try to force them into a win to draw out the interaction so that you can win. Or like on the reverse, if you're a control player, you might attack them with the intent of killing them rather than making them try to attempt to win, so that you don't have to expend the cards in your hand to interact with their win con. You can sort of like interact with them preemptively by getting them off of their win by just killing them, and then still have resources to interact with the rest of the table.
Yeah.
So, but sorry, Lyndon, go for it.
I was gonna say in every pod, decks have a kind of window that they're trying to win or that they're best positioned to win. Obviously, this kind of can change based on seeding, turn order, what cards people have drawn, but and all that. But like generally, the decks are like, okay, well, I'm a late game control deck. That's I'm trying to win. Like the longer the game goes, the odds of me winning increases, and there's some decks that are just the turbo. If I don't win within the first kind of like 4 turns, then my window is closed. Some decks trying to find that middle ground, and really trying to kind of identify where you are in that kind of pecking order, and where your opponents are really impacts how you select your attack targets and who to focus on. Like
it's really like the
cEDH
control
player
who's the beatdown, right? Except
yeah,
like with the cEDH roles interspersed instead of like aggro versus control.
And it's one thing too with combat is people are very or at least I find people are very nearsighted, where they're like, okay, I'm going to be attacking the player who's the most threatening now, when often people should be looking to the long game. Because I mean, you do need to be able to assess whether or not, like, sometimes you'll attack the player who's the immediate threat, because that's you're like, well, I hope we could beat him to death.
Yeah, I don't have interaction. Do you have interaction? Guess not. Let's attack him.
Yeah, like sometimes there's that level of like desperation, but if you have some interaction and you think like, we can probably keep this person in check, maybe you want to start trying to take him out. But if you're coming towards the end of their window, and like every turn after, their odds of winning just get lower and lower, you want to start putting in damage on the person who has the late game advantage. Like there's lots of decks like Yorion, Azami, Orvar.
Yeah, I was actually about to say, like, I think we have a pretty good demonstration of this in some of the games in our meta specifically, where we'll see a lot of the time that so typically we'll almost always have like an Urza in the pod from Keegan. Keegan almost exclusively plays Urza. So typically there's like some large construct in play, and when I play Yorion, a lot of the time, even when I start getting the game locked down, I have to be very aware of the damage coming in from that construct, because Keegan recognizes that Urza tends to be a good late game deck in like comparison to the rest of the cEDH format, but Yorion goes a bit over the top of Urza even. So his
A bit,
option,
dude.
yeah, very far over the top of Urza, sure. But
probably the strongest engine when fully humming in cEDH.
But
so
the idea from Keegan's side there is, okay, Yorion is obviously a threat to me in the long game once it gets rolling. Once I'm at a point where I'm no longer at a threat of dying to the combo players and I have like a relatively good footing in the game, I need to start pressuring this other deck at the table because its engine is going to outpace me in the long run.
Yeah. And often by the time, if you start putting on damage after the window of everyone else is closed, it's too late. Like, you just won't be able to close, to kill the Yorion or whatever long game control value player in time before they just,
yeah, that is
absolutely take over.
That is sort of, it's a complication that just having 40 life in the format really introduces, which is that it's really hard to burst people down without like dedicated like big dude plus Teamer Battle Rage, or like big commander plus Teamer Battle Rage, or like my commander.
I'm putting
is huge,
TBR in
trying
Riel,
to,
man. It's
like I'm gonna try to kill you from 21 with my commander. A lot of the time, that's not how like combat kills work. So the 40 life is actually makes it relatively complicated, because if you need to have somebody dead, like I need to have somebody like, I'm going to get outpaced by this person like 5 turns in the future, or not even, I know that this person is going to outpace me, but this person ended up outpacing me 5 turns in the future. You needed to usually like make that decision like 5 turns before they did that, so that you could get them dead before they started outpacing you. So like it actually gets relatively complex to decide your targets when you need somebody dead at the table by a certain point, because you need to make decisions very early on in the game a lot of the time of, okay, am I splitting damage and I'm burning it on somebody else, or do I have to focus this person down before they outpace me?
You can even look at the pod composition and be like, I'm not even going to attack the Nas player, right? Like, because there's I mean, our meta has evolved very like away from Nas a lot. And I just think Nas is very poorly positioned in our meta in particular. So like I wouldn't even like, if you just have chip damage and everyone else has like good blockers or something, you send it at the Nas player, easy. But I think it's not even unreasonable in our meta to be like, well, right from turn 1 I'm sending damage at Yorion. Like that's we know the game is going to go long. I need to get started now. Like, I don't think everyone's playing blue, and there's like, I don't think the Nas player stands a chance in this spot. I'm going to start, getting in my damage.
It's actually interesting, because I think there's even another layer to that, which is that potentially, depending on your role at the table, you actually might even want to avoid hitting the Nas player to encourage them to try to cast an ad nauseum. Because if potentially, say you're like a Gitrog player at a table, potentially you want to actually start pressuring like maybe a control player instead. So like, just say like, for example, maybe the pod is like turbo control Gitrog. Potentially the idea is that you actually want to start pressuring a control player, so that if the Nas player goes for it, and they're encouraged to go for it because you're not chipping their damage away, so like they're gonna have a better Nas, you might want to encourage them to run into the wall of interaction before you, so that maybe you can like pick off the second control player and then go 1v1 with the existing one who's already burned some interaction on the last person, right?
No, it's really complex to kind of work out these combat strategies and how to proceed optimally. It changes completely depending on the context. You can't just look at pod composition. You have to look at turn to turn kind of what people have in hand, everything you've seen. Like it's
also
almost an art to do
turn
combat
order
correctly.
is a big factor in a lot of these situations.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Like it can often be very awkward to like put some, like you generally don't want to put someone in range, or often there are times where you don't want to put one opponent in range of another opponent. Like if you put the control player in range of like the turbo player who you're worried about comboing, and then they go, cool, untap, kill the control player combo, like that's
there's actually a microcosm of that with planeswalkers as well, which is sort of interesting. Which is like, if there's like a Narset in play and you can't kill it on your turn, like you want it dead, but you can't kill it on your turn.
Yeah,
like you might not even want to swing at it because potentially if you swing at it, the next person in turn order can kill it and then
you want to be the first person.
Yeah,
It's with all stacks, you want to be the first person in to take advantage of it not being in play.
Yeah,
and that can sometimes be hard to kind of orchestrate.
So under this paradigm, we could just think of players as planeswalkers with 40 loyalty, right? They just happen to have static abilities of whatever stacks they have in play.
So what if I want to start attacking someone, but I'm worried about getting hit from someone else? How do you navigate that kind of situation?
I hate this.
So our play group has a special word
so much.
as a special word to shortcut an entire conversation. I think this was coined by Keegan, because Keegan would basically say the same line every time, which is, I think you'd say to Morgan a lot.
Collude?
Was it you guys? Was it Morgan?
Yeah. So the line would go something like, "Person, I have this large Urza construct, and I'd like to hit, your opponent. But if I do that, you can attack me. So if you agree not to attack me until my next turn, I can, whatever, I can attack that person." I forget the exact wording.
But is the wording also that you have to attack them? Or
it's just you have to not attack.
Okay.
You just have to. It's basically saying, like, I'm not going to have a blocker for you, so you have to agree not to attack me. And after, like, the 1,000th time of hearing this whole spiel, I was like, okay, we need just, like, a word that means this, because I don't want to listen to this speech every time we make this deal.
There's something that, just a random word to kind of substitute in for kind of this, a speech over and over again. I think it was something like in Hollywood or like SNL or something, they were talking about a writer who was like really, really talented and like a titan of industry, and they have to say all of this massive spiel before they would say any kind of like criticism. And so they just came up with a word, just like they pulled it out of their asses to just say, so they didn't have to go through this entire spiel. It's a really useful concept. But yeah, so in our group we just say banana bread,
because I believe when I finally snapped, Keegan was eating banana bread, or banana bread had come up in conversation that day, and so that's just the shortcut for, hey, if you agree not to hit me, I'm gonna hit one of your opponents.
Dude, eating banana bread and holding cards is kind of cringy.
Yeah, it's super like oily.
Yeah.
What the hell is wrong with your banana bread?
It's the store-bought banana bread, I think.
No, I mean, whatever.
I mean, homemade banana bread is not that greasy.
It's undeniably a bad idea.
It's like it's moist, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, it's gonna get some kind of like banana natural oils and shit on your cards and grease them up.
I could definitely think of much worse snacks.
No, certainly. But yeah, I definitely suggest any of our listeners try implementing this kind of just phrase into their
into the North says
group.
Try banana.
You know what? It's better if you don't need it.
What? No. It's better if you need it, because it means that you guys are actually maximally using the combat step, right?
Talk to your doctor to see if banana bread is right for you.
Yeah, and actually one thing we didn't cover under so two things I want to bring up. One is how to know if you're if you're attacking the right person, which is you'll hear there's like a telltale noise that you'll hear, and it goes a little something like this. Wah, wah, wah. Especially if it's a control player. If you're attacking the control player and they're like whining a lot about it, you're probably making the right call there.
I feel like that's sure.
Not no.
No, it's not true. But
you could definitely be making just wrong attacks there and still be getting complaints.
Yeah. No, but I guess maybe the real advice is you need to learn to be able to tune out the whining. Because
it's really
good
more
control
about
players. Good control players should be whiners. You should be whining. You should be trying to direct other people's attacks and stuff elsewhere. It's part of the game of control. Of you are going to try and take over the long game. You need to make sure that you're able to get there and that people aren't beating you to death. So whether that means setting up good blockers or leveraging threats, being like, if you attack me with this, I'm going to remove it. That the banana bread of like, oh, let's agree that we both want to attack this player, and so like I'm not going to get attacked. That's one way to do it. The other way is to be like, yeah, you're not attacking me, or otherwise that thing is getting removed. And that can often be a good enough threat if, you know. But it's also a good way to assess whether or not people have interaction to kind of back up their thing, or how desperately they need you dead or something like that. But yeah.
TLDR, there's a fine line between crying and politics.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and sometimes they overlap.
You've got to walk it.
You need to, being a good control, just go to your local theater and you know, take some classes, learn how to fake cry.
Here's the hot take:
Honestly,
every cEDH player should take an improv class.
Yeah. And the one other thing that we didn't talk about under uses for combat is psychological damage.
I
just putting your opponents on tilt.
I disagree with this,
dude. Putting your opponents on tilt,
this game.
dude. Keegan has mastered this art of making Morgan mauled.
It's only when he's
by
right.
attacking him and him be.
It takes so long and so many bad attacks to get this conditioning done correctly that it's just such not a good idea.
No, it's not even. It's not. You don't even need a bunch of conditioning to like. No, just purely just making. If you make an attack that you know is just gonna make someone real mad,
no, but
put them on tilt.
It's the repetition it's the repetition that gets to people, which means that you just like have to continuously be making, if not bad attacks, then just like suboptimal attacks against them. It's just like it's so much investment for not a reward that's worth it.
No, dude, the reward is absolutely worth it. You got to take all your edges, man. Come on.
The thing is that depending on what that person
like think about this. Think about it. You have a dork, right?
Want
and there's an
tilted.
obvious Nas deck that's open in play, and then you just attack a player who's you like a control player or someone you just want to like, you know, put off balance, and they're like, why didn't you attack the Nas player? Why are you attacking me? What are you doing? Dude, that's you just, is the one damage really going to matter that much? It could, but you know, the tilt factor is also pretty good, man. Yeah, those were the 2 points I want to make.
Yeah, there used to be a time when I could like listen to you guys when I play with you, but now it's just oh no, gotta just drown it all out.
Yeah, it's funny. We were playing on like Nexus or something the other day, and people were like, "Man, you guys talk a lot." I was like, "Wait, you guys don't? Like, you guys." Let me stress this to all of our listeners. You should be talking and politicking in cEDH. If you're not, there's percentage, there's win percentages that you're just leaving on the table. The ability to influence other people and kind of dictate the course of play, and honestly, you know, talk, just good communication. Sometimes, you know, people who play a lot with like new play groups or newer players will get in the habit of just saying things, or like saying their own threat assessment out loud, or saying, oh wow, this guy's scary, he's about to win using this exact method, to kind of like clue in other people. So using those kinds of tactics, just kind of being constantly vocal and you know, just making sure that everyone's on the same page can be really useful, even outside of combat, certainly. So, you know, use your vocal cords, use your vocal muscles. Don't just be sitting there quietly.
Anyway, getting back to combat.
hey, now that's relevant to combat. Okay, certainly relevant.
Yeah. So I did actually want to talk about something that I think doesn't really get talked about a whole lot in terms of, I mean, I feel like combat just in general doesn't get talked about a whole lot in the context of cEDH. But there's sort of like a sub thing in here that people. I feel like a lot of the time it's just not on a lot of people's radars, because you sort of end up sticking with the heuristic of like, oh, okay, I'm going to determine very early on in the game who I need to put damage on, and then I'm just going to continue putting damage on them. Where, like, I think that is correct in a lot of spots. I mean, if you just like need to keep pressuring the ad nauseam player, and eventually like the game gets to a point where you're going to want them dead anyway, like, yeah, you just like keep attacking them until they're dead. Cool. But I think especially in decks with just like large bodies where the damage matters, that you just like, you know, like there are a lot of decks with just large-ish commanders that you're just going to want to get into the red zone with anyway. A lot of the time, people don't really think that much about reconsidering their attack targets on every subsequent turn after they've made the initial decision. It's honestly, it is like, it's totally okay, and I would say it's actually optimal in a lot of situations to, like, you spend 2 turns attacking somebody, and then you, like, on that second turn afterward, you go, oh, there's been new information. I need to reevaluate my threat assessment. Maybe the person I've been attacking has actually lost position in the game. They, like, went for a win attempt and got stuffed, or even just, like, went for a value play and got stuffed, and they're sort of behind now, or they lost their mana to a board wipe, or there's a noof in play now and they can't do much and they're gonna struggle. It's like, it's very reasonable in a lot of those spots to then go, oh, okay, great, they're not a threat anymore, I'm going to switch my attacks. And it might feel like you're wasting damage because, like, oh, well, I mean, you put like 12 damage onto somebody that you're not going to finish them off or like even get them low.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, you, like, a lot of the time.
What do you mean? I've invested so many turns already, and it's gonna pay off.
A lot of the time, it is like, it is correct to just like, drop that attack target and get to work on the person that you actually are going to need dead in the, like, midterm. Because, like, again, this is what it connects to what I was saying earlier in the podcast, where, like, it's complex to, like, say, like, oh, like, this person, it's going to take me 5 turns to kill this person, so I need to decide now whether or not I need to do that. Like, if you miss that window because you were stuck attacking the other person who's no longer a threat for the last 2 turns, after attacking them for 2 turns before that, like, you've closed the window for yourself now. Like, you're not going to be able to deal with the other person in time. So it's, I think I would say it's definitely important, first of all, just to get your brain wrapped around the concept of just how to evaluate attacks and threats in cEDH. But I think after you've got a solid footing there, it's really productive to, in your games, just start thinking every turn about, am I still attacking the correct person? Am I still attacking the correct person? What in the game has changed that might make me reevaluate my attacks here? And just get in the habit, because there's actually a lot of percentage points to be gained there.
Yeah, certainly. So does anyone else have points they'd like to make on kind of combat damage more generally? Otherwise we can kind of start. We've got a list of of kind of different categories that, you know, it might be cool to go through.
I guess, yeah.
Last call for points on this.
I think one other important thing to think about when you're evaluating combat damage is everyone else's combat damage, both in how that can be a threat to you, but also particularly in how they in how they're generating advantage. One of the things I've seen, like, just too many times is someone who, like, you know, I feel like for whatever reason the stereotype of this was whenever I played with Kess players, where, like, they'd land their Kess, they'd have this 3/4 flyer, be like, cool, I can attack whoever I want, and then they'd get excited, they'd hit someone, and then they'd let, like, 2 Tymna players connect on them and draw a card, and it was like, okay, that, you know, yes, I get that, you know, you, like, figuring out where to put the damage is good, but also figuring out what other people can do in combat. You know, are they going to be hitting you? Is it worth it to be trading damage? You know, all of these are things that, like, it's important not to let them get sort of lost in the shuffle of oh, I can do, you know, I want to be as efficient as possible with my damage, but there's the other side of the coin of also I, you know, don't want to let my opponents get free efficiency, or however, you know, that's not maybe the best way of phrasing it, but
yeah. Actually, I did want to say also one thing on Reed with switching targets is that, you know, you've made the point about a Narset, right? And not you want to be the first person to take advantage of the stacks piece being gone.
Yep.
The same can be viewed as with, like, a player.
Yeah, 100%.
Where they've got, like, interaction in hand. You want to be the first person. You want to be the person who kills them, because then you get to take advantage of their hand being gone. So definitely, like, getting someone within, like, a reasonable range where they can't be one shot by, like, other players in the pod is something to consider as well. And then just switching off and then trying to kind of, like, build up to killing them. Yeah, so that's it for kind of like the kind of more general discussion about combat. Let's talk about specific cards that do combat things in cEDH. So we've got a couple categories here. We've got combat-based win cons. So this is not like we're excluding infinite combos here. So no Godo, no Kikijiki, no Dual Caster.
Like stuff that you would just play for other reasons as well.
Yeah, these are cards that are trying to non-infinitely take your opponents to 0. We have combat because of other things. So cards that aren't necessarily trying to like close the game purely with combat, but are big tools that either you're putting in your deck intentionally or incidentally have high value as an attacker. And then we also have advantage through combat. And finally, we have some hot picks that, which is just a couple cards that I want to discuss. So let's start with combat-based win cons. Well, what's really in the format that's combat-based win con?
Well, far and away, the one card I think, or the one deck that everyone thinks about is Winota.
Yeah.
As far as combat-based win cons.
I mean, it just puts so much power into play.
I think there's one thing to know about combat win cons that didn't quite make it in when you described it, which is like win cons where you need to connect to win, but can be infinite. So an example of that is like Najeela. You actually have to be connecting.
That's true.
But it isn't just straight up infinite, like Kiki, for example.
Yeah. I mean, Najeela also used to be kind of the queen of combat before Winota. I mean, arguably even still, like, I think Winota's taken a lot of the spotlight, but Najeela, one card that just basically can assemble an army to kill you if you don't do anything without having to cast any spells is...
So I think Najeela goes from
relevant.
being cast to killing the table faster than Winota does probably on average in terms of like
definitely.
just not like just assuming like no additional cards being cast from hand.
Well,
obviously, like in Winota, if you're drawing additional Winota attackers, then you're hitting stuff that produces tokens to make more Winota attackers. I think it probably outclocks Najeela, but just like Najeela on her own outclocks like Winota plus like 2 producers, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah. Najeela, though, kind of functionally has to get in before the board gets clogged up, right? Because it is just so weak to like incidental toughness creatures.
That's the other thing that I was actually going to get at, which is that I think the reason why we've seen Winota sort of take the crown of like the deck that kills people in combat the most recently is mostly just because like Winota is not an easy deck to stop combat versus with just like incidental play patterns, like holding up like random 2x blockers or like 1x blockers even a lot of the time. Whereas like Najeela gets really hurt by just a table that's aware of what Najeela does. They can just like put a blocker into play on turn 2 a lot of the time.
Well,
it's
also
just, like,
Najeela a lot of the time is winning through combo of some kind, right?
Well,
Whether
yeah,
it's a Najeela combo or consult or something. Whereas Winota is like, I mean, it does have combos, but most of the time that I've seen Winota win, it's with just beating people to death. And I think that kind of affects people's perception of the two.
Yeah, certainly there's some truth to that, but also just not getting stonewalled by everyone having a 1-2 on time is like, because literally that's
Thraben Inspector,
if
baby.
everyone has a 1-2 before Najeela can swing, then she doesn't get to grow. Like, that's all you need.
Yeah. So those are, I guess. So we have one other commander under this category.
Yeah. Well,
which
there should probably be like
Ishai.
2 under this commander or this category, but yeah, it's like Ishai and Kamal, right?
Kamal, honestly, Rafine could be under this category.
I think Rafine's in probably 2 categories here.
Yeah, which is one of the things that when I first saw Rafine, I wasn't like particularly excited, but really after playing a game against Morgan's Rafine list, which honestly, I mean, even I'm sure Morgan will. It was his like first kind of idea, and he was cramming a bunch of ideas and cute cards to test in there. and like, you know, it wasn't a kind of streamlined, optimized list yet. But even still, it was kind of terrifying seeing just the strength of the connive for in terms of beating people to death. Yeah.
I definitely like did not appreciate how quickly it could clock people without like playing a lot of dedicated damage dealers.
Yeah.
Especially because your commander like sort of protects itself plus is evasive just as a base, so like even if you have nothing else to stack stuff on profitably, because like people have chump blockers or whatever, like Rafine just clocks people super fast on our own as long as you have like some counter producers.
Yeah, and also like because you get to like choose where the counters go, you can often sort of go like, okay, we'll put the first one, you know, we'll put like the first few on Rafine. She'll be like, you know, we'll get her to like 5 power, and we'll keep setting her at 1 person, and then, you know, like just kill them with commander damage, and then try and beat down other people with something, you know, by like growing the rest of my board state, and sort of kill 1 person with commander damage while you kill another person with regular damage, and then, you know, the last person you can sort of decide.
Yeah. And then just to clean up, Ishai and Kamal here definitely. I think Ishai has actually sort of become the favorite, I would say, of people playing combat stacks in partners, which it's such a combination of things to say that isn't just like the most narrow category ever somehow. But
see,
yeah, it's
the thing is that I disagree, because if you look at like anyone's Ishai list, it's not stacks.
I was more talking about band stacks has been more popular recently with the Thrasios Ishai. But
sure,
yeah, certainly
I think the vast majority
Ishai
of people
Jeska is
Jeska.
definitely not stacks. Like decidedly not stacks for the most part.
There's something about being in the 3-hit club. There's something even better about being in the 2-hit club.
Yeah.
Imagine the 1-hit club. That's kind of the Ishai proposition.
Yeah.
So under Combat Win Con, we also have some cards outside the command zone that people are putting in the 99 to kind of kill people through combat. So we have the one I want to touch on first is Craterhoof Behemoth, which is basically only run in Yisan, as far as I can think.
I think they also play it in... I think they play it in Yeva. I think when people play Ashaya, they play it mono green. We'll just say mono green.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, you're so in Yisan, it's at least functioning as a way. It's a 1-card, you know, combo, where if your main kind of combo lines go awry, you have something at kind of the end of the line verse wise that you can go to and kill people.
I'm trying to figure out the visual metaphor in my head, but I love something about the idea of Yisan being something close to a train or like a mechanic on a train or something, and then there's just like the blockade at the end of the line, which is Craterhoof Behemoth. The game just ends as soon as it gets there.
Yeah. So outside of Yisan, I think a lot of the dedicated combat win based cards are found in stacks decks, and typically like, you know, Abzan, at least Abzan, creature based stacks sort of stuff. So I think Kamal, like
I think
in non Kamal decks, like I remember putting in Tendershoot Dryad and Elishnorn in my Anafenza Raspberries deck ages ago.
I think I don't actually think it's like exclusive to stacks, but I think currently there aren't many decks aside from stacks that currently have like the combination of attributes that are required to like produce a deck that wants to play combat-centric win cons, which is that like
actually one that I'm doing. So I have like a Kinnan list I've been kind of working on in the background. Kinnan, I actually in my Kinnan list I like Tendershoot quite a bit.
Yeah, so it's I find that the decks that want to dedicate slots to combat-based win cons are typically decks that tend to have a lot of power in play anyway, or have a reasonable amount of power in play anyway, and want the game to go long, which sounds like stacks decks because that is a lot of stacks decks, but there are also there are other decks that fit those criteria that aren't stacks, that just happen to be there as well for stuff that might want to play combat-centric win cons.
Okay, so that covers combat as a win condition. And next up we've got combat because of other things. So this is kind of the things where combat can be relevant incidentally. I mean, I guess we have Sarah's Ascendant under this category, but often people put it in their deck very intentionally.
Yeah, I feel like
for combat reasons.
I feel like people probably put Sarah Ascendant in their deck with dreams of killing people with it, and then just realize that either it doesn't kill people and they don't have another use for it, or it doesn't kill people but they still get a ton of life out of it, which is still useful for some decks.
Yeah, I think it was in this category specifically for ad nauseam.
Yeah.
It just is a juicer.
Yeah. I mean, the life link can certainly in a deck that's worried about getting beat to death and pressured off of an ad nause, an early Sarah's Ascendant can basically protect you from that while also taking other people off of nause. So that's something. Although you're obviously putting in a card that if you're an ad nause deck and you're getting pressured in the early game, taking you off your life total, people can or Sarah's Ascendant can stop working, and then it can just be a dead draw in the later game. That's definitely something to consider with that. But most of the other cards we have in this category are kind of incidentally very relevant for combat. Gilded Drake is a big one. The amount of times you I've been playing Baral, and I've got a Gilded Drake, and I'm like, oh man,
I don't want to cast this.
I could take something, but I am going to be getting clocked with this 3/3 flyer, and that
especially
that adds up.
Game.
Yeah.
Give the Bruce player a Gilded Drake; they'll smile.
Oh god. We've got Crom from the command zone. 4/4 flyer is huge. Haste, huge. It can pressure people.
Damage, huge.
Yeah. The fact that you only need to deal 20 is or 21, sorry, is quite relevant. I was gonna say 20 as kind of a shorthand, but Crom deals 20 before it deals 21. Yeah. Then we've got Karnstructs, and you'll often see this from Urza, but now with Urza Saga in the format, people are able to leverage that to make giant constructs. This is something that you can do in Gitrog. Gitrog weirdly has quite a few cards that instantly do combat quite well. Gitrog obviously being a 6/6, although it's a 6/6 that you barely ever turn sideways. Sorry?
With Death Touch. 6/6 with Death Touch.
Yeah. For some
never forgetting the Death Touch.
Hey, they can't block with the shy. That's a bajillion.
No, that's true. I wish I had reach though, like some of the other frogs.
Just block it.
All right. It's already got Death Touch, man.
Yeah,
Come on.
Yeah, okay.
This is the Gitrog fantasy episode.
Urza Saga, the ability to recur. Urza Saga, just make a ton of tokens. Is really sweet. And another card we have under this is Allosaurus Shepherd, which when we first talked about it, I think I'd mentioned that I'm happy with Allosaurus Shepherd because it's seeing play and helping a bunch of lower color niche decks, and I'm glad to see that trend definitely held true. It gets run. There's lots of decks that don't run. In fact, I think Destiny Spinner has to be run more than it, right?
Probably.
I don't know.
But also,
I think there are very few decks that want a Shepherd but not a Spinner.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, there's lots of decks that want the Shepherd, but it depends on if you the Spinner is for if you're casting stuff that you need to protect stuff that isn't only.
No, but I'm saying a
Um,
lot of even mono green creature combo based decks probably just play the spinner anyways.
Like you just play both.
You play both, yeah. Whereas I
If
think
you're
that there are
playing
lots
Sword
of
Shepherd, you're probably already on the spinner.
I don't know. I think, you know, it's like the first copy of the of that effect on a creature adds a ton of copies to the deck, and the second copy can kind of be unnecessary. Anyway, this is getting off topic.
Yeah. If you're on red, you're probably not playing Shepherd.
Yeah. Constructs, Allosaur Shepherd, another way to pressure people's life total incidentally. We have just a couple commanders as well. Godo. Godo's a kind of a weird one because you're really only ever casting it for to try and win. However, there are times when you go for that and they can, you know, disrupt you. Like you get as part of your combo, you get Hammer of Nazan, and then you try and, like, you know, get your copy of Godo, comes in, you get your Helm, and then let's say they remove Helm with like a Beseiju or some kind of removal spell. Well, turns out Godo equipped with a Hammer of Nazan, a 5/3 indestructible that can attack twice per turn and, you know, counts towards commander damage, is quite threatening combat wise. We also have Ikra, and which basically exists only for combat and gaining you life, which is kind of unique in cEDH. Yeah, quite a few decks run these incidental combat cards. And then our next category,
you could also put
advantage.
You could also put
combat.
Kenrith in that category, where like
that's true. That's very true.
It's generally not like a dedicated part of the plan that it's beating you to death, but it certainly can flex into doing that if it needs to.
Absolutely. Yeah, and our I guess our last category is actually going to be the hot picks, but before that, it's our advantage through combat. When do you guys want to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean it's relatively self-explanatory, but there's some interesting ones here. Obviously, we've already talked about stuff like Winota, Tymna, Edric. Another one in that category is Yuriko. Also Rafine in this category, same type of thing. But there's some other interesting stuff here.
Well, there's a couple of, like, there's ones that are giving you
cards, which
card based,
yeah,
right?
sort of
like,
what we
Tymna
just
and Edric.
went through.
Yuriko is like weirdly
cards
doing
and
cards and damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Winota is putting cardboard into play, kind of giving you both a mana and kind of card advantage simultaneously. And then, you know, Malcolm is one that, you know, is certainly generating advantage through combat, but it's generating mana advantage.
Same thing with Grim Hireling, although Grim Hireling is not just mana, it's also like producing removal through combat, which is sort of nuts.
Derevi would be another one in the same category as like Malcolm.
Duretti?
Or Derevi, sorry. Yeah. Yes, not Duretti.
Yeah.
Good catch. We've mentioned Rafine. Rafine is kind of, again, blurring the lines where it's putting in, it's doing the same thing as like Yuriko.
You'll notice that a lot of the good cards that go into combat in cEDH that do a lot of things, or at least multiple things. Same thing with the Professional Facebreaker, produces cards and mana, pretty hot.
Yep. Paco produces advantage by attacking, but also
by
just
murdering you.
Yeah. It's honestly just Paco not even getting the cards is terrifying on its own in certain pods. Corvold can also get ginormous. There's a couple things that, like, there's a couple really some commanders, you know, I play a lot of Riel. Riel has probably the highest power. I think it probably gets higher. It's on average, it's going to get higher than Ishai. Honestly,
I would say on average it has the highest power on a given board in like a lot of games.
I feel like
but you just don't often turn it sideways because of the lack of evasion and also wanting to keep up blockers. Yeah,
and also it has 3 toughness,
really
so somebody could just trade like
yeah,
a random 3 power thing. Which like there aren't a lot of like 3 power things that you can just throw away, but there's certainly a lot of 3 power things that you'd be willing to trade for an active Rafine.
Real.
So. Oh, Riel, sorry.
Yeah.
It's dude. starts with R, has an I in there. Both do discard stuff.
Revi, Duretti, Rafine, Riel.
Hey, at least it's not freaking. There's Vadrick and Vadrock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
dude, the people who come up with names at WotC, dude, they're sweating. They're like they're just pushing the Scrabble pieces around on their desk, trying to come up with like. Oh god.
I was actually about to say Vadrick also a very large thing in combat, and blue red has overlap with Riel, which is too much confusion.
So yeah, that's our kind of last major category, and then we have kind of the hot picks or whatever. So I wanted, we at one point had a 4-way Thrasios Tymna kind of like grind fest, like
it's
test
adorable
pod or
that you said at
where we were just
point.
testing a bunch of yeah. The kind of idea was to test weird tech pieces or whatever to kind of break an extremely mid-range Thrasios Tymna heavy meta. And one card that I tested that I liked a lot was Luminarch Ascension. And honestly, man, I just want that card to work, because if it gets online, which, you know, it's not crazy to get online, it is nasty.
I love that you're making this statement in current year, when it's been a card that people have been trying to make work for like literally like 4 or 5 years at this point, probably even longer.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I'm just part of that team, man. I want this card to work. It's so sick. Yeah, actually the biggest downside to Luminarch Ascension. So because one of the things is like in our meta, no, it can't. But if you can, you know, you only play it when you can defend it. But
so you're already one thing about combat. Anyway, continue.
No. It's in Thrasios Tymna. It's everyone's playing freaking weenies, man. You know, it's not that hard to block stuff with the Thrasios and not be like actively losing combat. But the biggest drawback to Luminarch Ascension in that particular pod was I think everyone was running Steel Enchantment.
Yeah, basically.
Getting your Luminarch Ascension Steel Enchantment
so funny.
Is the worst. Because like I mean, part of the appeal of Luminarch Ascension is that it's not a creature. At least in that pod, because you know everyone's on Gilded Drake. And there's lots of creature removal.
So, like, if you were playing, like, a Tender Shoot Dryad, like, there's a very real chance that it just gets stolen the turn that you play it, or, like, the turn after you play it. Whereas,
you need to be able to defend it.
Like, Luminarch Ascension doesn't really have.
You have to sandbag your Gilded Drake until at least 2 others have been played, basically.
Dude, this is how we get Jin Pong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my hot picks. Matt, Reed, you got some?
Sure, I've got some. So, of course, Goreclaw, you know, among the cEDH viable green storm decks, to be specific.
It's still like the 4th best in that category, which is hilarious. You have Sylvala, Marwyn, and probably a Shia all above it.
Sentence.
So it's 5th in the mono green storm and cEDH category.
But bears, so there you go.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, the strictly combat-oriented card, Shaman of Forgotten Ways.
Why do we let you keep this on here?
Because you need 8 power, and you need to have a big board. It's basically combat damage at that point. It just speeds it up a little bit.
Okay.
Let's see unbanned biorhythm use
powers. Reed.
Yeah, my hot pick for the Thrasios Tymna meta, but I think it should just be played way more than it is Zal's Persecution. Fantastic combat trick.
Yeah.
It's just such a great combat trick in the format, and it's in colors that you don't normally get Pyroclasms in, so people aren't expecting it like ever. And also just being instant speed, like you don't even have to do it during attacks. You can do it during like somebody else attacking, and then mess with their combat instead. It's just
and I guess.
Oh yeah, no,
my hot pick is. Not exactly. I guess it's more in line with Reed's hot pick, and it's everyone's favorite red-black hate bear Mayhem Devil. because that card just just makes everything
Nice.
like
Yeah.
just it turns every like possible exchange into, hey, we can work this so it's in my favor. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I appreciate the Mayhem Devil pick, but I'm surprised that you didn't go for Kenrith's second activated ability.
yeah,
pick.
that one's good too, but it's obviously like it's a much more dedicated, like it's 5 mana and then more mana on later turns that you have to hold up, as opposed to just slamming a Mayhem Devil and then like it's good against a bunch of different like combos. It's good against, you know, people trying to attack. You can just work with people to kill off any sort of problematic permanent pretty easily.
Well, to kind of put a bow on this topic,
I think that's actually that actually might be a decent just like that's sort of a gut check, huh? We can do a real gut check, but that was like very close.
It does it. Let's just have this be the gut check.
All right.
Reed can do his polling.
The next one.
Wait.
Fine. But wait, do you want to change your? Wait, yeah, Matt, you have to pick
Lock
Goreclaw or Shaman of the Forgotten Ways.
Okay, well, my last hot pick is Toggo, because
Why
not give everything unblockable, because no one's playing it.
No, honestly, it's one of the best Ragavan decks I've ever seen, because Ragavan is reliably gets in. Like, it was so frustrating. I was playing against Stel, friend of the show. He was playing Thras Toggo Rocks, which everyone should check out that list, by the way. That Stel and I worked on, and I think it's on his profile on Moxfield. But he was I had Riel in play, and was, you know, Riel's giant and a 3 toughness, and he's attacking me with a Ragavan, and I was just doing the Arthur fist, like, I want to block this, but I can't because of this stupid rock. Yeah. That's a good pick.
Riel of
like
all of them is unfortunate.
But yeah, so like I was saying, to put a bow on this kind of topic, you know, we there's a point here that we have about like combat being the most viable it's ever been, which I think is kind of true, and it's honestly kind of a welcome sight that, you know, there's no longer the meme of just cEDH, everyone not playing solitaire necessarily, but like just kind of sitting there doing their own thing behind a creature, and no one's, you know, thinking about combat. I really like that. Combat is something that we need to consider, and you get a lot of advantage, or you can find kind of edges to take advantage of by.
Well,
really
I mean, like
combat a lot.
the game was designed around combat. Like, we're playing a sub format of like Magic the Gathering, which is like the primary way of playing the game is you interact in combat with people. So it like
Don't tell me how to play the game, okay? I'm gonna
just
copy my copy spells as much as I want.
like having combat be part of a format is just like super healthy, because it's what a lot of cards are designed around. It's what a lot of like game mechanics are designed around. It just like adds so much depth to the format when it's like something you have to think about, right?
I don't think it's what the Commander format was designed around.
I mean, they put in commander damage. You know, like there is some aspects of combat that are.
That's a band-aid solution.
Yeah. Yeah. 40 life really is a game changer when most cards in Magic, you know, that are combat oriented, not just 40 life, but 40 times 3, you know. Most cards are designed around 1v1 20 life. It just makes it hard to find these kinds of cards. So you just need to find the cards that scale extremely well. But yeah, definitely our listeners should try and work more on or everyone should just kind of work more on assessing combat. And
no, we should go back to the format where you could just play Teferi and have a reasonable expectation of untapping with it. the pre-Timno world.
Yeah.
Turn 4, cast a fairy, just untap without taking any loyalty damage.
Yeah. And I was actually going to utter a curse sentence. I'm just going to refuse to utter. Yeah, so no listener question this week. You know, we've got listener question channel on our Discord. and a patron listener question. So if you're a patron, you get priority on listener questions. But right now, we don't have a ton of listener questions in, so feel free to ask, and we'll probably answer it. That about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at Into the North Pod, by our email intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. Next, special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/IntoNorthPodcast. Another way you can support us is via our TCG Player affiliate link. So anytime you want to purchase something from TCG Player, if you use our affiliate link, which is in the podcast/YouTube description, a portion of your purchase goes towards supporting the podcast and is greatly appreciated. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our video editor Manta Ray Hat. The next episode will be up in 2 weeks. Until then,